Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishna, and this is basically 211 part of the formula. And previous basically it was 210 part. So here basically we are discussing in this 211 part. Basically we are discussing that how the subscription plan data basically World Bank is sending to each and every country. So one of the way basically we saw that is World Bank basically sends the money to one bank of here basically I'm taking the example of India country. Assume that they are sending the money to India, and in India basically they are sending money to the one of the Delhi bank. Assume that. Now Delhi bank is basically going to divide the money to each and every bank. Right? World Bank is sending money to India by one of the bank. Bank, that one bank basically sending money to the each and every banks, and each and every bank basically are doing the manipulation of each and every buildings and each and every persons basically staying in that building, and according to that the data basically are sent to each and every buildings. For example, there are 15,000 people staying in one building. So one building basically data, that is the tax basically which the building is paying. According to tax, the each and every person basically data the World Bank is having. So according to that, the data is basically sent, and each and every person's oxygen basically you can say data are sent to that building with the help of the power company and the energy companies. According to the data basically sent. So you can just imagine the critical level. It's not critical basically, it's very critical. So here basically that is the one of the thing, right? That is one of the thing, right? So that is basically one of the way basically you can see. And subscription plan basically say that there are basically many ways created by us. Same way basically the subscription plan group says that we have created around 3 to 4 lakh subscription plans for India country only. And in India country basically one of the plan is 15,000 city basically sending the data, the rain data to the India country, not to one city basically, to the India country basically. So you can just imagine basically one of the person basically told that is this possible, this thing basically which I am telling is this possible basically what. So he told them, there is one city basically, there is World Bank, right? The World Bank is basically sending the data of rain energy basically, we can give this name as a rain energy, to one city for basically this rain system basically, rain energy basically which is sending, that is for one India country, that is for India country. Okay, so for India country basically the data is getting sent. So here they are sending according to the bank information which is given by the World Bank. So according to that, the rain energy basically sent to the one city, and there basically the manipulation is happening. First manipulation there basically is happening. For example, there are 1 lakh city. So 1 lakh city is going to get how much rain that basically is settled in that city. That is basically calculated in the city. Like for example, 1 lakh city basically is going to get this much rain, this much rain, this much rain, this much rain. Each and every calculation is done in one of the city, right? where basically the World Bank has sent the data of the energy, of the rain energy. After that, slowly with the help of the, assume that basically satellite, basically if we take here the help of the satellites to push that rain energy to 1 lakh city, that basically will cost too much, right? So for that, basically set of software company basically created few softwares that is going to push that 1 lakh rain energy to each and every city from that one city, because satellite will cost too much, right? Satellite is going to cost too much, but activation without satellite, basically nothing is going to happen. If you want one small grass also in earth planet, small grass in this earth planet, if you want one small tree also in this earth planet, without satellite activation, you can't have that. You can't have that single small grass also and small tree also. So that much basically the things are controlled and kept in certain groups hand. So you can just imagine basically the critical level. But few basically countries says that we basically don't believe in satellite, we don't believe in universe, like this basically groups are also there, but they are also basically by default controlled by these groups only, because each and every software company basically, each and every software human clone software basically are directly connected with the satellite only, directly connected with the satellite only. So you can just imagine the basically the criticalness level of the each and everything. So here basically the thing is the subscription plan data basically, which is sent by the World Bank to the each and every city, and the rain data which is sent from the World Bank to one city, and that one city is basically dividing the rain data to 1 lakh city. So assume that they are picking each and every time one city. There are 1 lakh city. Like this, basically, they are handling the maintenance of the hand. They are handling the rainy season. That you can say rainy season system basically. And in this basically the banks are doing main role basically. Why? Because the plus minus basically you can't do in plus. Once the data is sent of the energy data to the environment, you can't do the plus minus, right? So that's why basically the monetary things basically comes into the picture. Then basically the things are basically connected. So government sends the data, that is basically the money, to the World Bank, and then basically the World Bank basically sends the money back to the banks. So like this basically there are many ways. Basically, this is the basically you can say smallest way, because here basically you don't have to do the plus minus of the energy. So there are basically many ways. There might be many ways basically. There might be many ways because um, the work basically never gets stops, because universe never stops basically. That's why basically. So if universe basically never stops, then basically how the works will stop basically. That's why basically never a power company stops, never energy company stops, never a nuclear power plant basically stops, because there are more. For example, I will take one example. 1,000 city is equal to text box, right? On the base of 1,000 city, one text box is created. So that 1,000 city has taken into picture, into consideration. In that, basically, lots of backups are there. For example, one city gets some problem due to some natural disaster, so another city is there. So like this, basically, more than 100 backups are there. In one time, basically, 100 city will never get disaster, right? 100 city basically never get disaster, never get disaster. So basically, that type of basically backups are also basically prepared, so that the process never gets stops. Because once the process gets stopped, then basically it's very difficult to start the process. It's very difficult to start the process, because because lots of people say that we only don't know basically from where the process has started, but this actually is supposed to be documented also. One day basically this is um, going to might required also, that from where the process is starting, from where the process has started. Mostly basically it's very difficult basically to get from where actually the process was started, but its sequence basically is there, right? Sequence of the nuclear plant is always there, but from where exactly, from which energy basically the process was started, up to that level basically things are very critical to handle, to each and every control basically we answer. So here basically we are discussing that how the nuclear data are basically sending this basically, or all are the nuclear data, right? Whatever basically the energy generates, wherever the data basically are converted into the energy to the earth planet, that basically by default converts into the nuclear data, by default going to convert to a nuclear data only. So this is also there basically one of the things basically we can say. So banks basically plays most dangerous role basically we can say. That's why basically banks are created by the set of power companies, set of energy companies, and set of nuclear power companies. So nuclear power company decides how many banks need to create, how many currency need to print, how many international currency need to print, because the investment might happen in India. So how many currency is required. So that type of basically things basically gets into picture, basically. Because for example, one USA person basically done the investment in India of assume that 1,000 crore dollar. So that 1,000 crore dollar basically need to convert to rupees, and then basically that need to print also, because that 1,000 crore one day basically they have to give back to that person also, or basically they can do some favor of that $1,000. They can basically send the resources. So just see basically how important role basically the resources are also playing. The $1,000 basically, which money was invested by the one of the businessmen in in the on the behalf of this $1,000, the resources are basically sent to the other that country. So you can just imagine basically the barter system, basically the old system. Here the money monetary was the one of the help, one of the investment, and on the behalf of that basically the Indian government basically sent the resources basically. Because few groups says that the resources, for example, software resources. Software resources basically you mostly gets in India only. Mostly you gets in India only. So basically they send the software resources to the that country basically, where the thousand, from which businessman basically invested the $1,000 to the India country. So you can just imagine the barter system basically still gets activated, and still basically it's getting activated only. Always keeps on activating. Always keeps on activating. And one of the person basically told that when the barter system basically was completely closed, that time basically the exact energy basically of the barter system basically that might have captured, right? So how this connects, that we will be going to see. For example, currently basically the currency system is ongoing, right? Currently basically currency system is ongoing. For example, till now basically after the barter system basically the world basically has printed around 95 lakh crore 95 lakh crore dollar currency in the market. 95 lakh crore 95 lakh crore dollar in the market, just taking as an example. So that much basically 99 lakh crore currency, that is basically the dollar, has printed in the market. That basically contains one energy also basically. that contains basically one energy also. Same way basically the power bank basically has created banks. Power bank basically has created the banks. Power bank basically has created the banks. Same way basically the nuclear bank, nuclear power company basically has created the banks, the energies, the power companies. So if I say that, for example, there are many banks in this world basically, which are directly connected with the nuclear power company basically, directly connected with the nuclear power company, because their tasks are up to that level. So just see basically how the things are basically getting mapped, that I will give. How the entire currency system basically, entire the company system basically, how it's working, the of the big level basically, bigger level basically, that basically they are going to see. For example, assume that the nuclear power company basically told that the software company basically is going to create one, assume that 4 lakh basic 4 to 5 lakh projects, 4 to 5 lakh projects, or assume that 5 to 6 lakh projects in this time period. So according to that, basically the nuclear power company basically has created the energy and sent that energy in the monetary format to the certain banks, to the certain banks and to the power companies also, as in that. According to the currency, the amount is also basically transferred. So there are basically 5 to 4 to say 5 lakh or 6 lakh basically the projects basically has to be done from the software side. That is basically decided by the nuclear power company, and they basically send the data to the power company, to the banks, to the world banks, and then basically the projects basically are getting divided to the set of groups basically, that basically are not the software company groups, that are not basically the software company owners. They are basically this one certain groups basically, we can say here basically we can take that these groups are IITs, IIMs. They basically gets the one for 4 to 5 6 lakh crore, sorry, 4 to 5 6 lakh basically the projects, that basically in the, that is basically in the nuclear power company data, that nuclear power company told that basically you have to generate this data, and these all are the basically rough data basically. According to that, basically the data which is basically given by the nuclear power company, the IITs, IIMs, and the other agencies basically created 4 to 5 to 6 lakh projects. Directly, basically, the software company is not getting. Directly, the software company owners like TCS, Infosys, they are directly not getting the project. So, like this group basically, assume that these groups are around uh, 2 to 3 lakh people. 2 to 3 lakh people basically are designing, keeps on designing. This their basically work never gets stopped, because nuclear power company never gets stops. So like this basically 4 5 6 lakh basically projects was designed already. They basically designed also. IITs, IIMs, and basically other groups, basically agencies, who basically few agencies are very powerful also, who basically says that we have created the IITs and IIMs. Their syllabus, everything basically are drawn by our groups. So that are also with, so education level is basically very deep. So here basically we are not going into the education level. So here basically they say that we have created the 4 5 6 lakh projects, and the project is already designed, right? The project's boundary basically you can say, because the nuclear power company says that we have basically designed the boundary. In this boundary only basically you have to create the projects, and that boundary basically is decided by the monetary thing basically is calculated by the banks, that this would be the project budget, and beyond this budget basically you can't do, because the for example we are purchasing one laptop, right? That laptop basically costs more than 50 to 60 70,000. So according to that basically the data you are going to get, you are going to work, you are going to think basically, you are going to write each and everything basically you are going to do. So according to that basically you get the image. For example, you purchase any fruits basically. Assume that you are purchasing any fruits, you are purchasing any vegetables. That vegetable you purchase, so according to the money basically given, you get the data, right? You get the basically blood cells. According to blood cells basically you get the oxygen. You are basically not getting the special oxygen, right? You are basically, because you are not the special person basically. Special person basically gets the special oxygen, that are basically different thing. So according to that basically things are there, right? So here basically what we are discussing here, the thing basically we are discussing it, 4 5 lakh, 4 to 5 6 lakh basically the projects are designed by this set of groups. Then basically the software company basically comes into the picture, and they basically gets do the bid. Assume that the bidding basically company are around 70 companies. 70 companies are basically created by the IITs, IIMs, and the other energies. They told that basically this is the 70 company basically specially created to bid the project. So like that basically the 5 4 5 6 lakh basically projects are dumped into this bid projects basic bids websites basically that are basically 70 to 80 70 to 80 websites basically according to the budget of the project. For example, um, 5 lakh project are there. 5 lakh rupees one project is there. So that basically is up to 5 lakh project basically that are divided into another bid project. More than basically 5 lakh projects are divided into other projects. More than 1 crore project, 1 crore amount project are basically divided into other budget, other bid basically project. So basically each and every bid 70 website basically users are there basically according to the level of the company basically. For example, TCS project, TCS basically have one user ID in that one of the 70 um, bid websites. They basically have one user ID, so their basically user ID might be totally different. Why? Because their level are up to that level. Their level are basically up to that level. Infosys. So Infosys level are basically up to that level. Or in some small private company basically, assume that. So their basically user ID might be something else. Assume that few basically company basically they are basically just registered. So their basically user ID would be up to that level. So according to that basically the things are divided, and then basically they gets the project. So each and everything basically are controlled by that 70 bid websites, and they are basically getting controlled by the IITs, IIMs, and the other agencies who says that we basically got the projects data from the nuclear power company and from the power company and from the banks. Banks basically has drawn the project cost, and nuclear power company and the power company they has drawn the power of the energy. For example, one potato basically is going to get this much energy only. So who is basically the person basically who has told that potato is going to get this much energy only? That is basically decided by the nuclear power company and the power company and the energy company. And the money basically who has calculated this for one potato basically this cost is going to happen, that is basically decided by the banks. So banks basically connects with the money, and the energy power company and the nuclear power company and the energy group basically they are basically connected with the energy level. So this much energy basically you are, this much vitamin basically you are going to get from the potato vegetable, that is basically decided by the energy companies and vegetable companies, sorry, energy company, power company, and the nuclear power company. So just see how the mappings are basically done, and each and every projects basically, for example, 4 5 6 lakh project basically which is designed by the nuclear power company. They told that this 4 to 5 6 lakh projects basically are going to generate more than 16,000 human needs. So just see basically the nuclear power companies told that they have told this information that 16,000 16,000 human need basically the this energies are this 4 to 5 6 lakh projects are basically going to get. So according to that, basically the information is given to the IITs and IIMs and the other energy basically. They have designed each and every projects according to this human needs basically, which is going to, that is basically 16,000 human needs are going to generated from this 4 to 5 to 6 lakh projects. So just basically up to the mapping level, basically the things are basically done. So this is basically the IITs, IIMs, and the other groups basically who basically has created the 70 bid websites basically, and from that bid website basically the software companies are doing the bid and they are basically getting the projects, and these projects are basically going to create the human needs which is basically designed by the nuclear power companies, energy companies, and the power companies. And that level that project basically costing is basically done by the banks, that are basically the world banks and the private banks and the publicly limited banks, central bank, and basically many types of banks are basically there. Corporative banks are there. Many banks are there basically in this world basically. So like this basically the banks are basically divided. So this is basically about the 211 part basically. In 212 basically we are going to discuss little bit more about the company basically, how basically companies are creating the projects with the chained with the energy company, power company, and IITs and IIMs, how they are basically directly connected with the each and every software companies, how basically they uh, finish they basically how they complete the projects from the software company, from the certain level of plans, from the certain level of ideas, how basically they finish the projects, how they finish how they basically successfully create the 16,000 human needs with the help of the software company. That basically we are going to discuss in next level of the part. That is basically the 200 and this is basically 211 in 212 basically. Sorry, this is basically 211 in 212 basically we are going to discuss the part of this thing basically just now we have discussed.